Evening, folks. It's Michael DeCarlo for decarlosdanger.com. It's about 9 o'clock in the evening on the West Coast on Monday, July 10th, 2017. Don't want to get these dates wrong. But I start a new little thing. It's going to be bedtime stories for folks. Tonight's bedtime story is taken from a miracle that changed the world. The 5,000-Year Leap, Principles in Freedom 101. And it is by Skousen. And we're going to go on the 23rd principle, because I think this is extremely important. The 23rd principle: a free society cannot survive as a republic without a broad program of general education. So, but you got to understand the punctuation. They're talking to you. If you're not paying attention, you miss it. A free society, capital F, capital S for society, cannot, capital C, cannot survive. Won't even live. If you can't live, how the hell are you going to survive? You'll die. As a, lowercase, republic, capital R, without, capital W. So it means without. And lowercase a, broad, depth, breadth, undefined, larger than normal, right? Program, capital P, so it'd be kind of like public, and lowercase o for of, and then capital G for general, and capital E for education. General education. So, grandkids, this is important. You too, chitlins, all y'alls, this is important. All right. A free society cannot survive as a republic without a broad program of general education. 23rd principle. This is for you, grandkids. I love you. The English colonists in America undertook something which no nation had ever attempted before: the educating of the whole people. The colonists had such a sense of manifest destiny, which led them to believe that they must prepare themselves for a most unique and important role in the unfolding of modern world history. Universal education was therefore considered an indispensable ingredient in this preparation. John Adams describes the beginning of public education. The movement for universal education began in New England. Clear back in 1647, the legislature of Massachusetts passed a law requiring every community of 50 families or householders to set up a free public grammar school to teach the fundamentals of reading, writing, ciphering, history, geography, and Bible study. In addition, every township containing 100 families or more was required to set up a secondary school and advanced studies to prepare boys for attendance at Harvard. John Adams stated that this whole program was designed to have knowledge diffused generally through the whole body of the people. He said they made an early provision by law that every town consisting of so many families should be always furnished with a grammar school. They made it a crime for such a town to be destitute of a grammar schoolmaster for a few months and subjected to heavy penalty, those are called taxes, so that the education of all ranks of people was made the care and expense of the public in a manner that I believe had been unknown to any other people, ancient or modern. The consequences of these establishments we see and feel every day. Written in 1765. A native of America who cannot read and write is a rare, is a comet or an earthquake. It has been observed that we are all of us lawyers, divines, politicians, and philosophers. And I have good authority to say that all candid foreigners who have passed through this country and converse freely with all sorts of people here will allow that they have never seen so much knowledge and civility among the common people in any part of the world. Liberty cannot be preserved without a general knowledge among the people. They have a right, an indisputable, unalienable, indefeasible, divine right to that most dreaded and envied kind of knowledge. I mean, of the characters and conduct of their rulers. It's from Koch, The American Enlightenment, on page 239. The importance of good local school boards. The success of an educational effort was due largely to careful selection of highly conscientious people to serve on the school committees in each community and supervise the public schools. Historian John Fiske asked these schools committees were bodies of great importance. Then he adds, the term of service of the members is 3 years, 1/3 being chosen annually. The number of members must therefore be multiple of 3. The slow change in membership of the board ensures that a large proportion of the members shall always be familiar with the duties of the place. The school committee must visit all the public schools at least once a month and make a report to the town every year. It is for them to decide what textbooks to be used. They examine candidates for the position of teacher and issue certificates to those whom they select. Fiske, Civil Government in the United States. Boston, Houghton Mifflin and Company, 1890, page 22 and 23. Then we have European and American literacy compared. Wow, that makes sense. There's a story behind this, girls, about your grandpa. The unique and remarkable qualities of the program are better appreciated when it is realized that this was an age when literacy was the common lot of most people in Europe. John Adams, who spent many years in France, commented on the fact that of the 24 million inhabitants of France, only 500,000 can read and write. Koch, American Enlightenment, page 213, 217. In the American colonies, the intention was to have all children taught the fundamentals of reading, writing, and arithmetic so that they could go on to become well-informed citizens through their own diligent self-study. No doubt, this explains why all the American founders were so well read, and usually from the same books, even though a number of them had received a very limited formal education. The fundamentals were sufficient to get them started, and therefore they became remarkably well informed in a variety of areas through self-learning. This was the pattern followed by both Franklin and Washington. Tocqueville makes comments on American education in 1831. We got what here? 9:45. Gradually, the zeal of the universal education spread from New England to all of the other colonies. By 1831, Alec de Tocqueville of France visited the United States. He was amazed by the fruits of his effort. He wrote, "The observer who is desirous of forming an opinion on the state of instruction among Anglo-Americans must consider the same object from two different points of view. If he singles out only the learned, he will be astonished to find how few there are. But if he counts the ignorant, the American people will appear to be the most enlightened in the world. In New England, every citizen receives the elementary notions of human knowledge. He is taught, moreover, the doctrines and evidences of his religion, the history of his country, and the leading features of its constitution. In the states of Connecticut and Massachusetts, it's extremely rare to find a man imperfectly acquainted with all these things, and a person wholly ignorant of them is a sort of phenomenon. Democracy in America, 1:326-17. Excursions in the wilderness. De Tocqueville pointed out that as the visitor advanced, right, what we got here, 11 minutes. Toward the west or the south, the instruction of the people diminishes. Nevertheless, he said, there is not a single district in the United States sunk in complete ignorance. Tocqueville made extensive excursions along the frontier and commented on the observations as follows. At the extreme borders of the Confederated States, upon the confines of society and wilderness, a population of bold adventurers have taken up their abide, whose peace the solitudes of the American woods. As soon as the pioneer reaches the place which is to serve him for a retreat, he fells a few trees, builds a log house. Nothing can offer a more miserable aspect than these isolated dwellings. Yet no sort of comparison can be drawn between the pioneer and the dwelling that shelters him. Everything about him is primitive and wild, and yet he is himself the result of the labor and experience of 18 centuries. He wears the dress and speaks the language of cities. He is acquainted with the past, curious about the future, and ready for argument about the present. He is, in short, a highly civilized being who consents for a time to inhabit the backwoods and who penetrates into the woods of the New World with the Bible, an axe, and some newspapers. It is difficult to imagine the incredible rapidity with which thought circulates in the midst of these deserts, or wilderness, in parentheses. I do not think that so much intellectual activity exists in the most enlightened and populous districts of France. Abib, page 328 and 29. Education includes morality and politics. He then went on to comment concerning the close relationship between the program of universal education and the preservation of freedom. It cannot be doubted that in the United States, the instruction of the people powerfully contributes to the support of the democratic republic, and such must always be the case. I believe where the instruction which enlightens the understanding is not separated from the moral education. An American should never be led to speak of Europe. An American should never be led to speak of Europe, for he will probably display much presumption and very foolish pride. But if you question him respecting his own country, the cloud that dimmed his intelligence will immediately disperse. His language will become as clear and precise as his thoughts. He will inform you what his rights are and by what means he exercises them. He will be able to point out the customs which can obtain in the political world. You will find that he is well acquainted with the rules of administration and that he is familiar with the mechanisms of the laws. The American learns to know the laws by participating in the act of legislation, and he takes a lesson in the forms of government from governing. the great work of society is ever going on before his eyes and, as it were, under his hands. In the United States, politics are in the end an aim of education.